Okay, I've been looking through the Gizmo contour maps activity A and B, and I see quite a few of you struggling with some of the answers here. So I'm going to go through some of the questions. The first one, when we talk about, in activity A, make sure that you have, your click flat for the start for the landscape, set the contour interval to 50, and set the water to 0. And so if you've done that, you should look at something like what I have here on the board. When you, then it says click add to add exactly 4 times, click the horizontal view. So I'm going to add 4, 1, oops, sorry, I got to click add, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've clicked 4 times here. Remember, my contour interval is 50, right? And it says to turn this to horizontal view, so I'm going to look like this. And if you look, right, you created a hill. These circles here show that, concentric circles show that you're going to the top of a hill, and it makes sense that each one of these lines, and I'll zoom in here, each one of these lines is parallel with each other because they represent 50 meters of elevation, each one does. And notice that the lines get shorter as they go up this hill, and also that they are exactly the same distance apart. Parallel lines, basically. And so those are the designators. And if you go down through, it asks you about each one of those, and it goes through and highlights that. Now it says, notice that the one contour interval is labeled index contour, which is that the one that's up here, right? If you look, it says 500. And it's asked what the elevation of the highest contour line on the hill is. So if you look at the 500 again, you notice it goes up 1 more, and that would be 50 more because our contour interval is 50. So you should be able to figure that one out now. The elevation of the lowest contour line you see. So it's a little bit more counting here, but the lowest contour is right here. And if you go down, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 down from there. So it's 450. 400, 350, 300. So you're going down by 50s because that's the contour interval in the map. Here it asks what is the maximum height the elevation of that hill could be. And here you have to think about, in this circle in the center, right, you're going to draw your imaginary line. If you do that, you have 550, you have 600 would be that imaginary one. It can't be 600 because if it was, there'd be a line in here. So it's just before 600. So you take 600 and you'd subtract 1 from it. So when you do that, you come up with 599. And that would be the highest possible height the hill could be. And the reason why is because it can't be 600 and it can't be 500 because it's, there's undulations or changes in that hilltop. So it could be underneath it, but it can't be lower than 500, and it can't be 600 or greater. So it's got to be somewhere in between. And that's the way we calculate it, doing that. Then it says to raise the water level until the top of the hill, right, to the nearest 10 meters. So when you do that, let me shrink this down. You're going to go into raising the water, which is down here, and you move your water up. And if you look, right, you get pretty close to the top there at 590, but you can also manipulate these numbers. So if you go 599, you notice everything's missing. There's nothing there. So 596, there's still nothing there. 595, and you still can see nothing there. For 594, maybe. Oh, 591. Oh, so 591, there is a piece there. 592. There's a little tiny piece there. You can see that little piece right there on the screen. And so 592 would be the highest. And it says the nearest 10 meters, right? So 590 would be fine. Some of you may have a different, some of you may have something different, which is fine. But as long as you work that water and get it to the nearest 10, that's fine. As we go down, it wants you to reduce the water level to 0, click flat. So I'm going to reduce my water level. I'm going to switch over to the isometric view. I'm going to click subtract. I'm going to make it flat. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. So I've gone down 3, and you can see this little bowl it's created in the topographic map, which would indicate a depression. Right? Depressions on the map are usually used with these little hatcher marks that are on here that show that the elevation is decreasing. So now it asks you, it says, based on the contour lines, what is the lowest possible elevation of the deepest depression? This is a little bit trickier than the other one, because what you have to do is you have to imagine there's another line below this. So let's zoom it in, right? So we're going to imagine there's another line inside of this. And if there is, right, this is 250. Our intervals are still 50. So it'd be 200, 150, 100. And then if we drew the imaginary line, that would be 50. And if you think about it, you can't subtract 1 from 50 because then it'd be 49, right? And then that 50 line would be there. So you actually have to add 1 to the depression to get the lowest possible number, and that would be 51, right? 50 plus 1 is 51. If you look here, they want you to add the water slider. So let's zoom out. Sorry. Let's zoom out, and we'll move the water slider up. And it wants to know when you actually get some water in there to the nearest tenth. And I have water in there now, and it says 60. And so the nearest 10, I have 60 on mine. You might be able to get a little bit lower, than that. But right now I have 60 in mine. So that's water level for the slider. Now this part seems to be, I'm going to move my face. Oop, I didn't want to make me bigger. I wanted to move me over. So I'm going to move it over here so I can see. And if you look, right, it wants you to create this little mountain here, right? And when you create the mountain, it says, how does the spacing on the lines relate to the steepness of the slope? If you look at the one they've created, if you notice right here, right, the spacing on the line on this horizontal view is not, it doesn't kind of show what it is. But when you look on the regular view of this, you'll notice that these contour lines tend to be further apart and these are closer together. And that is how it relates, right? Closer to lines, steeper the slope. So let's go down to this next part. The hiker, most of you did pretty well with this. It says, what is the contour interval of the map? To do that, to make that calculation, you have to subtract 250 from 500 and divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. And if you do that, you get 250 divided by 5, right? 250 divided by 5. So you divide 5 into that, and you get a contour interval of 50. So what's the contour interval of the map is 50. What's the maximum possible elevation of the mountain? Well, this would be 550, 600, 650. So then you're going to draw in the 700, and you subtract 1, and you get 699 for the highest possible. And that's how you complete that one. This seems to be the one that's giving everybody trouble. And it starts with figuring out the contour interval. You have 800 and 400. If you subtract those two, you get 400 meters. Right? So when you get 400 meters, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So 400, right, divided by 5 is actually 80. Right? So in this case, for this interval, it would be it would be 80. That would be 80. I get it right this time. And then they're asking for elevation of point A, right, which you have to figure out, what 400 minus 80 is. And then B, which is 800 plus 80. And then they want to know the elevation change between A and B. So here, right, you're going to have 880, right, because that's B, and 380, right? So you do the calculation. So the difference between 320, I'm sorry, I said 380. I meant 320, right, and 880, right? And you would get an answer. And that would be the elevation change. And then the horizontal distance, which is, if you look down below here, right, I have the formula for you, right? Gradient is change in elevation, which we just figured out between A and B, and it's divided by the distance between A and B, which is given right here. So you'd find out whatever the difference is between A and B, and you divide it by 2.8 kilometers, and your answer would be in meters per kilometer. Now that should answer any of the questions that you had on this topographic map Gizmo, and hopefully you're starting to read these a little bit differently, and you're able to understand where these answers came from. If you are still confused about it, please email me, and I can either do a separate video on something that you're specifically looking at, or we can possibly do a Zoom meet so that you can meet with me doing that, and we'll figure it out together. I can share my screen and I can show you what I'm working on. But if that helps, this is great. Again, I have office hours. They're posted in Classroom. And I also have anytime, available in the mornings between like 8:15 and 8:45 that you can come and visit if you set that up with me. So if you need a Zoom and set up with me, you're more than welcome to do that. And those office hours are also available to any parents or guardians that are interested as well. All right, so hopefully this was helpful, and you're able to complete this now.